Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Burn the Corporate Fiction. I, of course, am your host, Ryan. Hope everyone is doing well this evening. I'm freshly back from the International Truth Expo, which was an awesome experience, an awesome time with other great leaders in the truth community, such as, Mark Sargent, Dave Weiss. We had Jerry Kaczynski, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Nathan Thompson, and then several others. And it was a very good weekend. I will be uploading my presentation here tonight after I finally got it all clipped together and it's ready to go. So I'll be uploading that tonight after this stream. And so tonight I'm going to get into something I've noticed a lot, especially on my Facebook, stuff like that, is a lot of people still buy into this acceptance for value thing. And don't get me wrong, legally they should. I'm going to explain exactly, why they should and why they will not. And more importantly, the Cestui Que Vie myth. Not that it doesn't exist. It totally does. It's your estate. It's the trust created out of your estate, your decedent estate, which is under the management of the federal corporation, or under the administration, more accurately, of the federal corporation. I'm going to explain to you how exactly the banks access your credit to give you loans and demystify that. And I'm going to show you that there isn't just some account sitting there just brimming with funds waiting for you to claim it. If only you could become a secured party creditor or whatever other thing that you may have learned from just that very narrow aspect of what law is, because a lot of the law does not have to be written. Again, if you have been following my channel for some time, you know that the actual law is not written by man, it's written about by man. There's many things in law that can happen just through implication. You can have an implied trust. For instance, all 14th Amendment citizens are part of an unincorporated banking association because they engage in common enterprise, right, to discharge debt, to access credit and discharge debt through the Federal Reserve System, which is an exact contradiction to the Constitution, which demands that debts be paid in lawful money, gold and silver. And it's actually against the Bible and the common law as well, which demand the payment of debts, not the discharge. What is discharge? It's like playing a big game of hot potato where you basically just pass the debt around. Nobody ever really pays it. And the circle just keeps going round and round. Now, before I get into that, let me say hi to those of you in the chat. We've got Trade Learning. Good to see you. Mr. Thede, good to see you as well. And Living American so far. And backstage, we have Jerry Fletcher. You might know him as Sovereign Soul, Unchained Mind. How are you doing tonight, Sovereign? Muted. You got to mute.
I'm doing fantastic. A little bit drained. I'm a little bit tired. I've been on the phone dicking with shit all day long. It's kind of mentally taxing, but we're okay. We're good. Got to get up, go to work tomorrow. It's good. Be out and away from that shit.
Dealing with those people is very much mentally taxing. It's God. Bureaucracy sucks for sure.
It's circular reasoning. It's just like talking to a fucking globetard, man. It's circular reasoning, like these people, they say, oh, we know how old that stuff is because of the layer that we find it in. Oh, okay. Well, how do you know how old the layer is? Well, because of the stuff that we find in it. It's like
absolutely.
What?
Well, and it's funny because dealing with bureaucrats or even just the government in general, they keep knowledge so compartmentalized intentionally because they don't even want their own, slaves figuring out their worker slaves, right? Figuring out what they're actually doing to other people. So cops, they have no idea. Law enforcement officers have no idea what the law actually is. They know this one tiny little aspect of commercial law and administrative law, essentially, and how to cite various statutes, but they have no idea that it's not even actually law that they're enforcing at all. And it only takes on the color of law under certain specific circumstances. Lawyers, or rather they're attorneys, which is a feudal one who transfers homage and service from one feudal lord to another. That's what a torn means. I will show you that in a little bit. They're only taught process. They're not actually taught law. You don't go, okay, here's the fount of authority. Man does not. Yeah, that's it. They don't go, hey, man does not make law, right? They're not taught that. They go, and in order for man to enforce his will under the color of law, there has to be some sort of arrangement. There either has to be a contract or some sort of trust arrangement or a presumption of incompetency, allowing someone to take another under administration, which is primarily what they've done to all of us. That's what I talk about quite a bit. But tonight, I'm not really going to harp on the 14th Amendment so much. I've been posting a lot about it. You guys should have a pretty good grasp of it. It is a trust office, and it is a creature of the federal corporation. And the U.S. citizen owes its existence entirely to the federal corporation, which is why the federal corporation acts like its daddy. Wear your seatbelt, little infant. Don't you smoke that weed, little infant, right? Make sure you get insurance, little infant, because they have to protect and preserve the property in case the heir comes back to claim it. This goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. But anyway, yeah, bureaucracy, circular logic. Why are you doing that? Because it is written. Well, why is it written? Because someone wrote it. Okay, well, where'd they get the authority to do that? Well, it's written right here. It's like, what, dude? What are you talking about? They have no idea. They say, no idea where the authority comes from. All right, so it looks like we've had, he said, whoops, Ryan. I knew what you meant, Mr. D. It looks like we've had a normal person join us. Mojo's in the house. Good to see you. We got Josh. Say what? Good to see you. Brian Roy. Glad to have you guys. Excellent. I'm glad you could make it. So, some people, I'm going to be honest here. Some people are going to be pissed about this stream because, again, the truth is not ever as sexy as the lie. And it's much more fun to believe that you could just become a secured party creditor and get some black card in the mail from the Treasury saying, hey, don't tell anybody about this. But now you've got $1 million or however much you think you might have. But the truth is there is no money. So where we're going to start tonight is we know the 14th Amendment Citizen Trust Office. If you don't know that, and you don't know that it's an inferior status, one that makes you actually a ward of the state, then watch my previous stream, What is Law? What we're going to do is we're going to jump right to the bankruptcy and the Federal Reserve note. So there is no money in this country, okay? There is no money in this country. Mm-hmm. What there is negotiable instruments, evidences of debt, or debt obligations, if you will. So that's how these courts essentially act like banks or operate as banks, because if they can create a debt obligation, which they use their road pirate that we call police officers to do, create debt obligations for pretended offenses, generally for the violation of some administrative regulation regarding property held in trust as collateral for the public debt, then they effectively print their own currency, believe it or not, and they package that together and they sell it to institutional investors. And that's pretty much how the whole gambit goes. I call it securities farming. Some people call it trafficking, if you will, right? I don't think I want to really say too much of it that way on YouTube because, well, we know how YouTube is. So we're going to start here. Obviously, this is what backs the Federal Reserve note. So prior to 1933 and after the establishment of the Federal Reserve, they issued gold and silver certificates. The Federal Reserve did. Now, technically, this was a gray area with the Constitution because the Constitution says no state shall use anything but gold or silver as legal tender in the payment of debts. Article 1, Section 10. So technically, they were still honoring this because it was a paper evidence of an amount of gold or silver owed. Okay. And just so you guys know, the United States currency, our lawful currency, is measured in Spanish silver. A dollar is an ounce of 0.999 Spanish silver. That's what a dollar is. So you could take this gold or silver certificate. If you had $5 in gold, you would go down to a Federal Reserve branch, right, affiliated bank, and you'd say, hey, I want to, cash this in. I want to get my gold out. And if you were getting gold and you had a gold certificate, you would get the conversion rate of gold, or the conversion rate in silver of gold. So you get 5 ounces worth of silver in gold back. But the point is, it was hard, still technically hard currency if you exchanged it. Now, after 1933, once they had the majority of people under the 14th Amendment, they manipulated the stock market, obviously crashed it, caused a Great Depression, and then confiscated everybody's gold. And they took the 14th Amendment citizen and they said, all right, well, we have no gold to continue the existence of government. We have no silver to continue the existence of government. But what we do have is a huge pool of capital stock called U.S. citizens under our administration by virtue of what that citizenship is, getting privileges, immunities, benefits, and protection in exchange for your autonomy. Just read the 4th provision. The public debt shall not be questioned. That's what it says in the 14th Amendment. So the public debt shall not be questioned. In fact, there's an entire debate about it on the floor of the House of Representatives right here in 1967, June 13th, where they're talking about how it was never lawfully ratified and it was used by the federal corporation to usurp the sovereignty of the people, well, the states, and by proxy, the people. So we go up here to the top where it's actually the label is. It says the 14th Amendment, equal protection law or tool of usurpation. This is directly from congress.gov. I invite you to look this up and read it yourself. I'm not going to go into it tonight. It's not the point. But what the point is, they said we have this pool of capital stock. So we're going to enter into a perpetual trust indenture with the Federal Reserve. We're going to act as proxy settlers. The president and Congress acted as proxy settlers for the U.S. citizen. And what they did to settle or settlement is the conveyance of an estate for the benefit of some person or persons. This is generally what happens when a pauper seeks welfare, okay, or when somebody is declared incompetent. Their estate is settled with whatever authority is going to be maintaining the estate or administering the estate, meaning that that individual gets the controlling interest, sort of like power of attorney, if you will. And they acted as proxy settlers for the American people. And it says it right here, March 9th, 1933, page 83. It says, the money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. In short, what that means is they mortgage your property rights. I have another law review that expressly says as much and how it created the new fiduciary model in administrative law. So what this means is now you've entered into a trust indenture where everything that you acquire throughout your life, if it's registrable, if it's actually a hard asset, such as an automobile, land, boat, children, they have to be registered with the state. We're going to take a break here. We're going to pop over to what Regis means. All right, check this out. This is Latin to English. What does Regis mean? Of the king. So when you register something, you're giving it to the king. Okay. What does regi mean? To the king. Okay. And then if we switch it around, English to Latin, okay, and we say to be governed. What is that in Latin? Regi. Register. Register. Okay, I can't make it any more clear. It's how William the Conqueror took all the land in England and introduced the feudal system. He couldn't impose his own will against other men without their consent. So what he did was he took control of all the land and he imposed his will regarding his property, which you can do, and says, well, I'm going to let you hold this property in trust, and now you're the trustee, and you have to abide by my administrative regulations, which the king called statutes. Okay. Now we call them statutes, codes, and depending on which body we're talking about, sometimes it's decree, canon, doesn't matter, right? All the same thing, not law, but under the certain situation of, say, like a trust relationship with a group of people or a national trust system, which is what we have, it can be enforced under the color of law because it does apply to you. Your property rights were mortgaged if you're a 14th Amendment citizen. So this created a big national trust when they did this. All right, public charitable trust. So 2 years later, they had to introduce the Social Security Act because this was the next phase to actually make good on the pledging of the property rights of the United States citizen. They had to facilitate a way to do that. Now, this is the public charitable trust, or the Cestui Que Vie, right? So let's look that up real quick. What is Cestui Que Vie? I know what it means. It means the one who lives, right? But let's just, so I can show you guys, or the person who lives, rather. We'll do this, say Cestui. Okay, it's actually pronounced Cestui Que Vie. Okay, the person who lives, not the people, not the man, not the woman, the person. It is a trust that is it's a living trust is the easiest way to put it. Now, it's not you, and it's not some fantastic thing the government hides from you. It literally is the trust created from your estate and attached to the Social Security number. The Social Security number is the public charitable trust. Now, how are Federal Reserve notes issued? Okay, how are they issued? Well, obviously, we know it's backed by your sweat equity. That's what it says here. That's why you continue to pay for permission to use your property. You use it how you're told, and they're able to generate revenue from your misuse of the property. It's why you pay property taxes, it's why you pay income tax. Okay? Because even your labor has been mortgaged to service the public debt, to serve as collateral for the public debt. All right, so the way that Federal Reserve notes are issued, I'm going to show you. We're fast forwarding through this real quick because it's quite complex and there's a lot to cover with it. But let's hop over to 31 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, section 363.27. This is, what do I need to know about accounts for minors who have not had a legal guardian appointed by a court? Immediately, that should raise a red flag. Does that raise a red flag with you there, Saab?
A little bit, man.
What do you mean a minor who's not had a legal guardian appointed? So wait a minute, who's this minor then? If he doesn't have a legal guardian or anybody taking care of him, who is he? And why does he have a Treasury Direct account? That should be your immediate question, right? Of course. Well, if you've watched my previous episodes or streams, you already know that the United States citizen is considered an infant under Title I, Section 8. The words person, human being, individual, and child all mean an infant member of the species Homo sapiens who is born alive at any stage of development, which means you can be a 50-year-old infant, you can be a 70-year-old infant, you can be a 20-year-old. It doesn't matter what stage of development you are an infant because you're under the wardship of daddy government. All right, now that we got that clear, let's go ahead and look at the word minor. Minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? But there's more. The term minor, but wait, there's more. The term minor is also used to refer to an individual who has attained the age of 18 years, but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. Well, that's everybody. That's everybody who's a U.S. citizen who goes through the Treasury Direct. It's everyone. And if you're a 14th Amendment citizen. So this is how they declare you to be a minor. All right. Not to lose you, let's go back real quick. So now this makes a little bit more sense. Okay. Has not had a legal guardian appointed by a court. Right. So that means what it's saying without saying is people over the age of 18 who don't know about this minor account. Now, this minor account is not what some charlatans will try to tell you it is, like something that, oh, you become a secured party creditor and you get a black, credit card with a no limit on it or whatever the case may be. Nope. That's not how this system works. I can show you, and with a little bit of logic and understanding of what the system is, it'll totally make sense. And the prior proposition that I just said will seem absolutely ridiculous. And no offense if this is how you think it works, like there was a point in time when I thought it worked this way before I actually learned the history of law and everything that they're doing. And now, and how the system's set up. So what is a security? Let's go ahead. And so it says, Section A says, we do not permit a minor to purchase securities. Well, purchase is trading negotiable instruments. There's a difference between buying, purchasing, and exchanging. Did you know that?
No.
It's true. They actually had to change this definition in the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934. And they had to change buying, selling, trading, purchasing, selling, and trading to all mean buy. That's right in the first several pages of that. I can't remember exactly where. It was right in the first sections of the act. They had to change the definition for the purposes of the system because otherwise people would learn that there's a difference. But the difference is you buy something with gold and silver. You exchange valuable items, like, say, a cow for a pig or a cow for some work on your house or something like that, right? That's an exchange. Purchasing is with negotiable instruments. And negotiable instruments, because they are debt obligations all the time, they come with stipulations. See, a negotiable instrument doesn't become valuable until the obligations of that instrument have been performed. And that's why they're not actually considered money. And the Supreme Court's upheld that many times. A promise to pay does not constitute payment because it's not valuable until the obligations are performed. Therefore, it is some value at some future date, sure. And you can negotiate on the value of that now, but it's not inherently valuable, which is what makes it a negotiable instrument. These are also called debt securities. And now on top of that, when you purchase something, like say you buy a car with Federal Reserve notes, well, they're negotiable instruments. Okay, they're promissory notes. And you purchase a car with the promissory note, well, there is obligations attached to that promissory note that get transferred to the property you purchase. And that could be because this promissory note's actually secured by your sweat equity and your adherence, your compliance to the trust indenture, the motor vehicle code and other revenue codes, right? It immediately transfers the requirements of those obligations to be met to the property that's quote unquote purchased. So because you use Federal Reserve notes to purchase a car, it is automatically obligated to be registered, and you're obligated to have a license to use it because you didn't buy it, you purchased it, and it transferred those obligations. So I know it's a little confusing for some people, and the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. Okay, so buying, selling, or buying, exchanging, and purchasing, all absolutely different. So what goes on when you get a loan from a bank? Well, we're going to learn that real quick. So a parent or individual who provides the chief financial support of a minor may open an account for a minor. The person opening the account for a minor is referred to as the custodian of the minor's account. Now, they're not talking about a parent at all, unless it's parents patriae. What they're talking about is the United States Corporation or any of its administrative agencies. They provide the chief financial support. They give you the opportunity to be employed through their corporations. They give you, so there's two main benefits. Here's another thing I have to explain, is that a lot of things in the law don't have to be written. They happen by operation of implication, okay? Like implied contracts, and more importantly, implied trusts. And at this time, right here, when the entire nation or the entire republic under the 14th Amendment began to engage in a common enterprise for benefits, they became an implied trust known as an unincorporated banking association. This unincorporated banking association receives two benefits. One is the ability to access their credit without any money. And two, the ability to discharge debt as opposed to pay debt, which the Constitution and the law, the common law, demands that debt be paid. Even the Bible, actually, and that's what it all goes back to. It demands that you pay debts. Well, this satanic system allows you to play a big game of hot potato with that, where you merely discharge it and pass it off to somebody else, and it never gets paid. In direct violation of the Constitution, mind you, and that's why this unincorporated banking association exists outside of and parallel to the constitutional republic. So, back to 31 CFR. The custodian is a fiduciary for the minor as to the securities held in the minor's account. Now, securities is a very vague word that people get confused with. Security, a mortgage is a security, a traffic ticket's a security, a Federal Reserve note's a security. Security just means a secured evidence of debt. So this is what happens. The custodian must have an existing primary treasury direct account in order to open the minor's account. The minor's account is an account that's linked to the custodian's primary account. The custodian must use his or her primary treasury direct account as a portal to open and access the minor's account. Securities contained in the minor's account will be registered in the name and social security number of the minor and either sole owner, owner with beneficiary, or primary owner with secondary owner forms of registration. Okay? And so this is a big philanthropic system where everything has to be done under the guise of being for your benefit because you're considered an incompetent pauper infant under the wardship of daddy government under the doctrine of parens patriae. So when they appropriate money, and I'll give you a perfect example, when they appropriate money against your estate, against your sweat equity, it always has to be under some sort of philanthropic guise, some sort of charitable connotation has to be attached to it. So we're going to look at, I know a lot of your favorite programs, a favorite program of a lot of you called the space program. Okay? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now look at where the space program is located, the public health and welfare. Okay. Public health and welfare. What? Why is that? Why is the space program on? Because that's the only way they could appropriate money for it. And you'll notice every sentence starts, every paragraph starts rather, the Congress declares that the general welfare and security of the United States require. General welfare being the key word. Welfare is the linchpin to this entire thing. Well, the 14th Amendment is the linchpin to it. You pull that out, it all collapses. But it all has to be done under the guise of providing welfare, which is why you had this whole government shutdown and courts being like, oh, you have to provide welfare. Otherwise, the scheme falls apart because it's the whole purpose of mortgaging their states. Okay. So notice here, the Congress declares the general welfare. We'll go down a little bit to the next section. The Congress declares that the general welfare. Congress declared, and they do mean welfare. That's what they mean, welfare. All right. So now that we've got that down, what is the bank doing? Whoops, that's something we're going to get into. All crimes are commercial, by the way. It's right here. This is 27 CFR section 72.11. And of course, it would have to be because you're public chattel, but I don't want to get to that too quickly. So public chattel is property. And so therefore, when somebody steals the property in the case of kidnapping or damages the property in a case of assault, battery, murder, et cetera, it's actually just a financial, it's a commercial situation, commercial crime. And that's how they have to look at it, because you didn't kill a living man or woman. You didn't hurt a living or kidnap a living man or woman. You stole or damaged property. That's what it is. It's really, really dark and satanic, but that's a little bit ahead of what we're talking about. All right. So
I don't get, how did they justify that was in any way, shape, or form for the public's welfare? How did they even justify?
What are you talking about? The space program?
Yeah. What the fuck?
Oh.
And if you look at it, we've had it since what, 1967, I think, or maybe before that. And what actual benefit to mankind have they offered to us? Velcro?
It was 58.
Okay.
It was 58.
Yeah, 58. So what have they given us? How have we benefited as mankind?
Let's look at this. They're going to tell us. It says that it requires, the general welfare requires that adequate provision be made for aeronautical and space activities. Don't really explain why or how, right? But they did, in fact, further declare that such activities shall be the responsibility of and shall be directed by a civilian agency exercising. So they didn't really tell you. They just said, it's just going to be, beneficial. It's for the general welfare that we do aeronautical and space stuff. And then let's see, because they say welfare quite a few times here, do they not? So the United States required. Trust me, bro. Says National Aeronautics and Space Administration seek and encourage to the maximum extent possible the fullest commercial use of space. That doesn't exist, but so to commercialize space is for the general welfare of the United States. And notice it says of the United States, not the people. So we're talking about the corporation anyways, because the U.S. citizen is just an enfranchisement of an insolvent commercial entity. That's it. It really is. That's a fact. Is an enfranchisement of an insolvent commercial entity. And so, it is all commercial. So it's a commercial here. That's one of the benefits. So we can commercialize space. The unique competence in scientific and engineering systems of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration shall be directed towards ground propulsion systems research and development. And then somehow that benefits everyone. I'm not really sure. Well, see, no, again, it benefits the U.S. corporation. So that makes sense. And that the unique competence of NASA in science and engineering and assisting in bioengineering research, development, and demonstration programs designed to alleviate and minimize the effects of disability. So apparently they have their hands in the gene editing stuff as well, which actually it's the first time I read that. It's pretty interesting.
Well, a lot of their budget actually goes into black ops, DARPA type shit, smart dust. Surveillance systems, facial recognition, all that fucking shit. That's NASA's really doing that. That's what they do. That's what the money's going to. They ain't spending all that money on shitty CGI videos and all that nonsense.
Well, I'd have to agree with you. Hold on one sec. Okay. No, I'd have to agree with you that a lot of this was the whole thing is because they always have to appropriate funds under the guise of it being for your benefit, because again, this is a philanthropic system. I can't take credit for that word. That was Jeff Berwick, Dollar Vigilante. He calls them philanthropists and That's more true than probably he could know, unless he knows this stuff. It literally is an entire philanthropic system where these psychopaths, under the guise of providing charity for incompetent pauper infants, appropriate money against their sweat equity, aka corporate slavery, in order to provide them with things that turn out to not be very beneficial, such as the jab and NASA and so in order to appropriate this money, they have to make it look like it's for your benefit and then funnel it into their black budget programs. And NASA was a perfect vehicle for that. Because, well, obviously, as many of you watching know, that space is absolute horseshit. But, and we're in an enclosed system and all that good stuff, as even Bill Nye says, which is actually what Sovereign Soul, if you don't know who he is, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind, the man up with me on panel, is an expert in that. And that's what he talks about to a great extent on his channel. So if you don't know where we live, definitely check him out, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind. So, but yeah, they have to pretend like it's for your benefit. So let me tell you how they do this real quick. Oops, sorry, went to the commercial crimes again. So what they do is it says that the custodian has to use their primary account with the Treasury Direct, which the Treasury has been independent since 1920. For those of you who do not know, that was an essential aspect of what they did with the Federal Reserve to represent both parties to the contract once they started using promissory notes as currency, or debt securities, as they also call them as. And what I mean is that you'll notice if you pull $1 out of your wallet, if you have one, and by dollar, I mean Federal Reserve note, because it's not $1. Again, that's silver. And you'll look at this Federal Reserve note, and there's two signatures on it. There's the Treasurer and the Secretary of Treasury. Secretary of Treasury represents the U.S., the insolvent debtor. The Treasurer represents the IMF, the International Monetary Fund under the United Nations. And the Treasury is independent so that it can represent both parties of the contract. It can be a proxy for both parties of the contract. And that's how that's kind of set up. So what happens here, when you go to get a loan, is the bank acts as this right here, a custodian, because you're considered, well, a minor, an infant, if you will. Here, let me show you this infancy real quick, just so we can have this down in case you've never seen this before. This is going to be Title 1, Section 8, person. We're going to click on this. So let me close that. All right. This is important. Words matter. And the word include is a very important word, because have you ever heard the term includes but not limited to, Sovereign?
Yes.
Yeah. Why? The reason they add the but not limited to is because the word include is the opposite of exclude. And the inclusion of something is at the exclusion of everything else, unless you say, but not excluding, right? Or but not limited to. So let's read this little section A here. In determining the meaning of any act of Congress or of any ruling, regulation, interpretation of the various administrative bureaus. What are administrative bureaus? Well, that's the DMV, the EPA, the IRS, the ATF, the FBI, the CIA. They're all administrative bureaus. Or the interpretation of any administrative bureaus. And remember, it says any act of Congress, it says, and agencies of the United States. The words person, human being, child, and individual. So now let's break that down. Anytime you see the word person in any act of Congress or in any administrative ruling, regulation, or interpretation, right? When you see human being, right? It says that these words shall include, which means only this. It means only this. Every infant member of the species Homo sapiens who is born alive at any stage of development. So you're an infant. The U.S. citizen is an infant ward of the corporate state. And they're telling you this. And it doesn't matter what stage of development you're at. You can be a 60-year-old infant. Because if you're considered a person under the meaning of, or under any act of Congress or any administrative ruling or regulation, if you're a person or a human being or a child or individual, then you're an infant. Okay. Now watch, I'll show you. If you even click, let's go back. Let's go back one to code section 7. And let's see, does it have the word person? Nope. Okay. We'll go back to section 6. Here's persons. Look at that. Defines person. It's the same thing. Means infant. Means infant. Okay. So now that we have that down, you're not allowed to access this minor account because you're considered an incompetent. So the custodian is the fiduciary for the minor. Fiduciary is a trustee who is able to make financial decisions and transactions on behalf of a trust. That's what fiduciary means. And so you go to get a loan from the bank, okay? And the bank, you sign the loan contract, say it's a mortgage. What the bank does is they take that mortgage and they securitize your signature. Now, there is no money, period. In this whole economy, there's no money. So there's no account with money in it at all. But what they do is they take this mortgage and they use their primary account to open a portal to the minor account of the Social Security or of the Treasury Direct, right? Minor account, and they exchange the mortgage for the equivalent value. So let's call the mortgage a negotiable instrument because that's what it is. And they exchange the negotiable instrument for the equivalent of negotiable instruments in legal tender, which is Federal Reserve notes. And that's all they're doing. And so those Federal Reserve notes didn't exist in that minor account prior to you signing that mortgage.
Right.
Okay. They weren't there. It's not like that mortgage accessed something that was there. No, it created that. Yep. And the minor account was the vehicle for it to be created. So there is no just some trust account that you can just go access. And it was, oh, if only I have access to what we have here is a case of welfare people, right? Who the something for nothing people that have learned a little bit of law and now want to apply it to get something for nothing. And it's really damaging because the something for nothing is the way they enslaved us. FDR said, we'll use the free lunch principle. And he did with the New Deal programs. And people signed up for Social Security to access welfare benefits during the Great Depression, thinking they were getting something for nothing. But they weren't. They were giving up their children's future, their grandchildren's future. That's what was happening. And they didn't know that because there is no such thing as a free lunch. Okay, so a little interesting story about the way the system works is, have you ever heard of the Credit River decision?
No.
So in 1969, a man named Jerome Daly, and here I actually pulled it up somewhere, right here. All right, so, and here's the actual court case. And I know this is a fact because I looked up on Harvard Case Law Access Project and a ruling that happened a year after this in 1970. Well, let me explain what happened first, because the judge and about half the jury got murdered by whoever after this. So Jerome Daly, I'm dead serious, dude, because it's even in that thing that the judge in 1970 is like, well, Mr. Mahoney's dead now, so that's really of no consequence to him. And he said it with such like scorn. It's like, dude, damn, wow. Yeah, he did. He's like, but anyways, it was Justice of the Peace, Martin V. Mahoney, in the township of Credit River, Minnesota, County of Scott. And it was the First Bank of Montgomery against Jerome Daly. Jerome Daly was a lawyer. This is right around the time we got taken off the gold standard, and Jerome Daly was being foreclosed on. And he, being a brilliant lawyer, was like, well, wait a minute. If we just got taken off the gold standard, then what did you actually give me in exchange for my house, right, being used as collateral? So in order for a contract to be valid, both parties have to receive consideration. I'm sure a lot of you listening right now know this. Both parties have to give something of their own, which, as we just read in 31 CFR, is not happening when you go get a loan. They're not giving you anything of their own in exchange for, you're paying interest and all that. They're not taking money out of their account or funds out of their account and loaning it to you. Instead,
I believe it's actually illegal for a bank to actually loan money.
Yes, actually it is. Yes, it is. Because, well, actually money is technically illegal, even though it's lawful right now. See, gold has been reduced to a commodity, so is silver, when it's actually supposed to be the lawful legal tender of the republic. But anyways, what happened in this story is Jerome Daly's like, well, you didn't give me anything of consideration, right? You basically just securitized my signature and accessed my credit and acted as an intermediary and acted as if you gave me something of your own, charged me interest. Well, look, the judge ruled in his favor. In fact, in this court proceeding, look, they even have $1 entered in as evidence, right? And in this hearing, Justice Mahoney says that only God can create something of value out of nothing. right? And he was absolutely scorning the Federal Reserve. So he says that he says findings of fact, conclusions of law or judgment, right? Or judgment and determination. It says that the Federal Reserve Banking Corporation is a United States corporation with 12 banks throughout the United States, including New York, Minneapolis, and San Francisco, that the First National Bank of Montgomery is also a United States corporation incorporated and existing under the laws of the United States and is a member of the Federal Reserve System. And actually, I explain this sometimes, and I don't know if people actually understand it. There aren't multiple corporations. There's just one big corporation, right? And it's all part of the Federal Reserve System. It's just one big Federal Reserve System. All these banks and courts, they're part of the Federal Reserve System. Everything is part of the Federal Reserve System. And this justice actually agrees. He says that because of the interlocking activities, transactions, and practices, the Federal Reserve banks and the national banks are, for all practical purposes in law, one and the same bank. Meaning it might be Chase, it might be Bank of America, it might be Genesis or whatever. It doesn't matter what bank you're going to. They're all just a Federal Reserve bank, because what's going on here is you go to the bank to get a loan, and you sign that paper, and they take that paper, securitize your signature, and basically go to the Federal Reserve and access your credit. See, there is no money. All dollars or all Federal Reserve notes are physicalized credit. Okay, they're credit in paper form. That's it. Instead of having a credit card, you have paper credit, and that's all they are. And so when you go get this, there is actually the Federal Reserve essentially releases or gives the equivalent amount of Federal Reserve securities in exchange for the securitized security you just signed, right? The mortgage or whatever, and charges an interest rate. I say like 3%. Well, you guys all hear what the interest rate is. That's why they're like, oh, is the Fed going to increase or decrease? That interest rate is the cost of currency. And that's actually being charged to you because the government has nothing of its own.
Nope.
It has nothing of its. It has no credit, and it has nothing of it. It has nothing that it hasn't extorted or stolen from the people. Let's just put it that way. It creates nothing. It has nothing of its own. That's just how it works. That's why we kept it chained down. And there's a story about Davy Crockett that I'll tell you guys in a little bit. But essentially, Davy Crockett. Well, actually, I'll tell you now. This is the attitude under the original republic, the de jure republic, when it comes to the government spending tax money. Okay, there was a widow of an officer, right? The officer died, and Congress proposed to allocate $20,000 to the widow in honor of her husband. And Davy Crockett, who is a congressman, did 2 terms as congressman and died at the Alamo. He was one of the heroes of the Alamo. He stood up and gave a speech that killed that bill right on the spot. And he said, the power to collect taxes and the use of taxes is a sacred duty that must not be abused, right? Because this money is not ours, essentially. It's other people's money, and we're supposed to use it responsibly. We're given a sacred trust. And again, back then, they didn't take taxes directly out of your paycheck or tax your property, because those things are just the founders are rolling over in their grave with the system we have set up right now, because the idea of taxing your labor or your personal property is insane in this republic. It's insane. Okay. No, it was the proper tax system. And when asked how he came up with that speech, he said that when he was a younger man in his first term, a similar thing, and a disaster had happened, and Congress wanted to allocate tax money to the relief of those people. And he voted for it. And then on his way home, he decided to stop and solicit the vote of a farmer that he knew. And he walked up and he, started talking to me. He said, hey, I was really impressed with you, the farmer says to him, and I voted for you. I thought you had a lot of potential. But when you just voted for that bill, he's like, I got to say, I can't vote for you again. You had no right to spend that money on that, even if it was for the relief of other people. And people go, oh, that's fucked up, right? Like if you're hearing this right now and you go, oh, that's awful. Why? You should help other people. Sure. Maybe you can make the argument morally that you should help other people.
You can't force people to do it.
There you go.
The point.
That's the point, because it has to. When you take charity at gunpoint, it's communism, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's theft. There's no other way to put it. It's theft. Say, you know what? I'm going to take from you to give to them.
Mm-hmm.
You have no right to do that. And that's what the church organization, that's what the church has always been for, is the charity and caring of the poor and the incompetent, right? And that's what various other, philanthropic endeavors, right? Philanthropic endeavors have been for, and it's all supposed to be voluntary. And that's between you and God. But when the government starts taking from you at gunpoint to give to other people, no, absolutely not.
Right.
And that's why a central bank is absolutely necessary to institute communism, because you have to pull everyone under the corporate umbrella of whatever government, of whatever nation, because they're all corporations. And then once everybody is a member of that corporation and enfranchisement of that corporation, you bankrupt it, and the corporation goes, well, I'm the administrator of all the property and labor, so now I get to decide how to allocate these funds that we appropriate against the sweat equity of your estate. And that's how it works. And you can't do that without a central bank. And you can't do that without something like the 14th Amendment pulling everybody under the umbrella of the centralized corporation, right? And that's why the Civil War happened and all that stuff. So this Credit River decision, obviously Justice Mahoney, he said, only God can make, he was a good justice. I got to give him credit. And he lost his life for it. He was killed. And so was half the jury because of this, because the jury ruled in favor and the judge agreed that you didn't actually give him any valuable consideration for the mortgage. You didn't give him anything of your own. You merely gave him what was already his, which is his credit.
Right.
And so he got killed.
Here's what it's kind of like. Let's suppose I rob you out on the street. I say, give me your money, right? And you give me the money.
Right.
And I go across the street to the Subway sandwich place, right? And I buy a sandwich for this homeless guy that's sitting over on the corner. And I buy a sandwich for you too. And say, see there, you benefited from me robbing you. That's what they're doing.
That's actually exactly what they're doing. It's a great analogy. It's that simple. And now what the banks are doing is a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to go ahead and endeavor to give an analogy and see if I can do somewhat of a good job with such a complex thing. But what's going on is, say that I make, in my household, let's use a family unit. Let's say that I'm the Federal Reserve. My wife is one of the national banks like JP Morgan, Chase, whatever. And my kids are the U.S. citizens. Okay. My children, rather, because kids are goats. My children are U.S. citizens. And so I make a deal with my wife, right? That, hey, okay, here's what we're going to do. Now, these children can only use this monopoly money that I make up, right? That represents their behavior and their labor, right? Their future behavior and labor, no less. Okay. And they can only use this. But what they're going to have to do is go through you to get it from me. Okay. And so I'm going to charge you 3% on this, and you can charge them 6%. And ultimately, we're giving them nothing but something to represent their future labor, right? And we're charging them as if we're giving them something of our own. That's what's happening. And on a grand scale, it's like it violates the fundamental principles of contract law, because these banks are not giving you anything of their own, and they're not giving you anything of your own either. What they're doing is taking your promise to pay and giving you promises to pay in return that they've declared are legal tender. And now those promises to pay, the promissory notes, did not exist before you signed the mortgage. They're created by your signature on the mortgage in the exchange of the mortgage in the equivalent of Federal Reserve securities. Those Federal Reserve securities are created by the mortgage. So that's why I get frustrated with these people. And I know it is that stupid and that simple. It really is. You go, well, that doesn't make, that's fucking stupid, right? Yeah, excuse my language, but yeah, it is stupid. But that's what's going on. And they're not giving you anything of your own at all. So here's another thing. Like I was telling Saab earlier, the driver's license. So everything's commercial as well because of this system. Now, as the U.S. citizen, and I've explained this many times, I've probably beaten it to death, but the U.S. citizen is a trust office. It is an inferior status to the people. It is a creature of the federal corporation, and it has no rights. In fact, I'll show you just real quick, because why not? It has no rights. It has privileges and immunities. Look, this is Maxwell v. Dow. Okay. Hold on. It should have just popped up there. Bear with me for a second. Maxwell. There it is. Okay, this is a case from 1900. So shortly after the 14th Amendment was unlawfully ratified, and I'll explain why in a moment. And what he says here, he says the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. That's the Bill of Rights, dude. That's the Bill of Rights. And it says U.S. citizens are not under that protection. Well, of course they're not, because they're not we the people, first of all, and they have no common law rights. They have privileges and immunities determined by Congress, who administer their estates as infants, as wards. And it really makes sense when you look at who the 14th Amendment was made for. Who was the 14th Amendment made for? Newly freed slaves. People that did not know how to survive on their own yet because they just came from a place of servility and dependency, which is a screwed up situation. I get, and it's not their fault. But still, they would have to get used to our institutions and learn how to be independent before they could exercise common law rights. And Andrew Johnson said this when he vetoed the Civil Rights Act and the 14th Amendment. President Andrew Johnson said that. He said the avenues of freedom have just opened up to them. It's just going to take time. We don't need to create a whole new class of citizen. But they did. And then they tricked everyone into coming under it, which put them under the umbrella of the federal corporation and made them enfranchisements. And then all that remained after that was to establish a central bank and mortgage them to it. And now you've basically put them under an international trust indenture. This banking and bar tandem cooperation that's been going on has created national trusts. That was the goal, is to create national trusts. All right. And what I mean by that, essentially communism, like if you don't think that the United States right now is a form of communism, you're wrong. It's communism light, because what is communism but government control of all property and labor? And that's what the United States does. The United States citizen is a public trust office. That's what it is. And everything that you own is actually what you think you own is actually just held in trust and under the administration of either the federal corporation directly or the administrative agencies it is endowed regulatory authority upon, such as the DMV, EPA, IRS, etc. Right? And you can read it right here, black and white, that you don't have the Bill of Rights as a 14th Amendment citizen. You do not have that. This is why. This is why. And there is no trust account that you can become. See, this is another thing. And I'm going to explain. UCC at that point. Well, yeah.
That UCC was placed like a veneer on there.
What UCC is the modernized Lex Mercatoria, which is the law merchant, which is basically the common law of merchants going all the way back to the ancient Canaanite Phoenicians and then up through Babylon, Rome, all that good stuff. It's the law merchant is essentially just contract law, basically ancient contract law. But the way that they did that was by locking you into a trust indenture, okay, by mortgaging, first of all, by putting you in a trust indenture just by virtue of the 14th Amendment to begin with, which gave Congress and the president power of attorney, essentially. I'm just simplifying. It's not technically what it is. It's administrative authority, but it's the same as power of attorney, to be able to, if it's for the benefit of you as an infant pauper ward of daddy government, if it's for your benefit, they can mortgage your estate. If it's for the benefit, they can sell any part of your property if it's considered to be for the benefit of the estate. And that's all they have to do is paint it as, well, now we don't have money anymore because we got bankrupted by the Federal Reserve. So we're going to have to mortgage your sweat equity. You have to mortgage your estates for your benefit. Now you have the benefit of engaging in commercial enterprise and discharging debts. How you like that? Isn't that? You literally work for evidences of your own slavery. That's what Federal Reserve notes are. I'll show you. This is how they were able to do this. They were able to, in 1966, first, let me tell you what this is. It's called Equity and Admiralty, A Turbulent Path to Manifest Destiny by George P. Smith. It is out of the Northwestern Journal of International Law and Business from 1983. And he says, Effective in 1966, the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure were amended to effect the unification of civil and admiralty. What? Well, of course, because they pulled admiralty inland a couple ways. One, because the U.S. citizen is actually a foreign resident alien to whatever state you reside in. You never hear Michigan, Virginia, or any of the other states say Michigan citizens, Virginia citizens. You'll never hear the governor say that. You hear them say what?
Residents, yeah.
Residents, because resident is a resident alien, right? So everything is now international commerce, which allowed them to abolish the distinction between civil procedure and admiralty. Now everything's just under special maritime territorial jurisdiction. They also introduced port districts. And if they did not introduce, so tell me why Utah has a port district. It doesn't touch any, it's landlocked and it's pretty much a desert. Why does it have a port district? Well, I'll tell you why. So they can introduce special maritime admiralty, right? Special maritime and territorial jurisdiction. Now, if they don't have a port district, they have a port of entry or ports of entry all around the state. These ports of entry are generally governed by CBP and DHS. They're federal, and it allows them effectively to act like each state is an island in a sea of commerce. That's how they act. And now, since you're already a foreigner, a resident alien in the state, everything that you do is considered international or interstate commerce, which puts you under special maritime territorial jurisdiction. Even further, you get hired by the state to operate public conveyance. That's your driver's license. That is, a driver is one employed. I've done deep research on the etymological history and the legal history of the use of that word. And what a driver was that guy that went around town driving people in public carriages. That's a driver. Every time you look up driver, it has the connotation of one employed to conduct a public coach or carriage or other conveyance.
Because that's what you're doing. You're driving a team of horses. To drive is to compel. So you're compelling those horses to pull that wagon. That makes you the driver.
But for hire.
Right.
For hire. And it has to be public. So what's going on here? You register. Remember, we just looked up register. Regis means of the king, right? Mm-hmm. To the king. When you register something, you're giving it to the king, and the king gifts it back to you in feudum, which means in trust. And now you just hold it in trust, but have to use it like the owner tells you to. And because you give it to the state, it becomes a public conveyance, which is why it has state advertising, commercial advertising on the back of it. Is it your name on the license plate, or is it Virginia's name on the license plate? It's Virginia's name. Mm-hmm. Right. That's because that's Virginia's car, or I'm sorry, motor vehicle. Right. And then this is how they extended maritime admiralty inland so that they could treat everything. Well, actually, it's because everything is international or interstate commerce that they were able to do it. But nevertheless, that's why. So if you ask when you go to traffic court, it's always in what division? Criminal, right? Mm-hmm. The reason it's in criminal is because where they derive their authority to do this is special maritime territorial jurisdiction established by Title 18, which is titled Crimes and Criminal Procedure. Title 18 is Crimes and Criminal Procedure. Okay. You can look it up if you don't believe me. And so motor vehicle is defined for some reason in Crimes and Criminal Procedure because it's actually a commercial vessel. And it says the term motor vehicle means every description of carriage or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes. It doesn't say or, doesn't say sometimes used, doesn't say maybe used. It says and used. So in order to be a motor vehicle, it has to be engaged in commerce. So the state forces you via the trust indenture to get a driver's license. After you give them your property, now it's their property and they gift it back to you to be held in trust because it has to be registered to your social security number so that it is tied to the public debt and they can generate revenue from it, right? Because that's the ultimate underwriting trust is your social security trust that they tie all their commercial paper to in order to generate it. And because of that, now that you have a driver's license, you're always in a public conveyance and you're always driving. You're always in commerce because you're being hired by the state. One thing to ask the judge next time you go in for a traffic ticket, say, if I am being hired by the state, then where is my compensation? Because the workman's worthy of his hire, and that's going to trip the judge up hardcore. Right? Workman's worthy of his hire. Say that to the judge. Workman is worthy of his hire. Where's my compensation? If I'm employed by the state to be a driver, then where's my compensation? Because that's how they're doing this. And they can put it under criminal procedure or crimes because it's Title 18. That's the authority, because Title 18 creates the special maritime admiralty jurisdiction. I believe it is Section 7. We go look at that real quick. It's Title 18, Section 7. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's 7. Anyway, it's in there. It's like right in the middle. Nope, it's got to be 1, right where they establish it, right at the beginning. Crimes and criminal procedure. Bam. Right there. So you go Part 1, crimes. Yeah, and everything's commercial. So we're going to get to that in a second, too. I hate to see that.
And that's why it goes code this and code that and all this other fucking nonsense.
Well, codification is actually just a further expansion of a statute. So if I say, this statute authorizes the regulation of horse trading, then and that's all the statute says, then a body will be made, right? An administrative body will be made to regulate that. And then that administrative body will codify that statute, meaning going further into detail about the regulation. Now that we've been given authority to regulate by this statute, here's the codification and how it's going to be regulated. So that's what codification means. It's really stupid, but so I was just looking at this. I thought I had it pulled up. It's title. Oh yeah, I do. It's right here. Oh wait, that's not it. Well, Title 18, special maritime. We'll just put that in. Title 18. Whoops. Title 18, special maritime. Boom. Oh, it was Section 7. I knew it. Anyway, Section 7 right here. And this is what they're doing. Any vessel registered, licensed, or enrolled under the laws of the United States, right? And then it says right here, any vessel belonging to in whole or in part to the United States or any citizen thereof. And that's the big thing. Or to any corporation created by or under the laws of the United States or of any state, territory, district, possession of, et cetera, et cetera. So they come at this and they establish it from multiple angles because, one, like I said, you're a foreign resident engaged in interstate commerce within the state. 2, you're always employed via your driver's license when you're traveling, and you're using the state's public conveyance. Once you've registered, it's theirs. Makes sense? So now let's get back more to this welfare thing and this whole dependency thing and how they've put you in this situation by accepting benefits, right? And I did want to cover welfare before I shut this down tonight anyways. We're not going to do a super long stream. I know Sav's got to work in the morning, and I don't want to keep everybody up all night anyway. But right here, it says, man, this is Blackstone's commentary. So let me give you a little history. Blackstone, Sir William Blackstone, is one of the greatest legal minds in contemporary history. You know what I mean? Let's just say in the last 1,000 years. Every colonist that knew that was worth their salt had a copy of Blackstone's commentaries and the Holy Bible. It was just absolutely had to have those. And to be a Sir William Blackstone is a huge thing because attorneys are generally esquires or lawyers are generally esquires. He was a knight. Okay. So if you look up the definition of Templar, Webster 1828 dictionary, the very first definition is a student of the law. So Sir William Blackstone definitely knew what he was talking about. He's respected by many of our Supreme Court justices and cited in many opinions, even up to this day, because he's an authoritative source. And what he says is man considered as a creature, meaning man's created, must necessarily be subject to the laws of his creator, for he is entirely a dependent being. Okay? Meaning you cannot exist without God. That's just a fact. You cannot exist without God. You only exist because of God. Therefore, you must subject yourself to God's will. All right. And then he goes on to say, a being independent of any other has no rule to pursue but such as he prescribes to himself. So you're always dependent on God, because that's just the default position of being a creature, being a man or woman, as you just are, because you couldn't exist without God. However, if you're not dependent on anyone else, then you have no rule to pursue but such as you prescribe to yourself. Okay. And then it says, but a state of dependence will inevitably oblige the inferior to take the will of him on whom he depends as the rule of his conduct. This is what happens when you accept benefits. If you accept something that you could not live without, or you give the impression that you cannot live without it, or you do not choose to live without, but you accept it and give nothing in return, then what you actually give in return is your obedience. That's why FDR said there's no such thing as a free lunch when he passed the New Deal. He said, this is how we're going to get them. We're going to offer them free shit. Now, all these people crying about food stamps and welfare, they're contributing to your slavery. Okay? No, your taxes don't directly fund welfare. That's true. Your taxes service the debt that was created by appropriating money to give benefits in the first place. That's important to understand. They have to supply these welfare programs because it justifies them appropriating money against your sweat equity. I'm sick of seeing people cry about welfare. If you want welfare, go move to a communist country. And trust me, the welfare is not good. Okay. You get free services. Sure. Free healthcare. Awesome. Right. You're going to be on a wait list that's 10 years long. And if you don't die before you finally get called up to be seen, you're going to get the worst possible quality of care imaginable. Mm-hmm. You know why?
Imagine your hospital crossed with the DMV. There you go. That's what you'll have.
That's exactly what
you'll have. Your healthcare. It'll be like going to the fucking DMV. Or sorry, our computer says you're dead. You know, but obviously I'm not. No, I'm sorry. The computer's never wrong. Okay.
Right. And not only that, I've actually had something similar to that happen. I've had somebody, I went to the Secretary of State to, I can't even remember what for, and they looked me up and they said, well, you're missing. I said, I'm missing. Yeah. Yes. Somebody said, you're on the missing persons list. I said, well, obviously I'm not. I'm right here in front of you. So, you know, what can we do about it? It was just it's so dumb that this lady, it's like whatever's on the computer screen is just gospel. It's ridiculous. But anyways, go ahead.
Oh, nothing. I was just going to say, you know, these people that lose their shit and go blast the place up and shit, I can seriously understand where they're coming from. You know, I really can. Luckily, I have the temperance to know not to do things like that. But there are those out there, you're going to push them the wrong fucking way with this crap, man.
And we do not advocate that here openly on Burn the Corporate Fiction.
No, I'm just stating obvious facts and statistical probabilities, man.
I said openly, but anyway. So, this healthcare, like Saab said, yeah, it's going to be the DMV cross with the hospital, and even worse is what comes with this is death panels, cost benefit analysis. Now, right, because the government has control of all labor and property because it's one big national trust, right? Now they get to look at you and is it worth more just to euthanize you? Or, you know, is it going to be worth, you know, spending the government funds on the procedure to save your life? Well, a lot of times we'll just look at Canada. Oh, you got what? You scraped your knee? Yeah, I think I'm recommending euthanasia. Yeah, I think we're going to have to go ahead and schedule you for euthanasia. You got a headache? Yeah, you know what'll take care of that? Death. Yeah. And you can't, your head won't hurt if you're not alive.
That's what they've been doing in Canada. Yeah, man. Fuck them people.
Yeah. So, but no, and that's the whole thing about welfare. The government has nothing of its own that it has not taken at gunpoint generally from the people. It has no credit of its own. So that brings me back to That's the whole thing. The nexus is the offering of benefits. The benefit as an unincorporated banking association is the benefit to discharge debts against the law, against the Bible, and against the Constitution, because you're supposed to pay your debts, and to be able to engage in commerce and access credit. So there is no account. There is no account just sitting there with money in it. I'm sorry, guys. I know it's not the sexy version of what people want to hear of, oh, we can get that black visa and just be able to. No, dude, I get it. And there's a lot of charlatans out there. The acceptance for value. Let's talk about that. Okay. There's the other one I wanted to cover tonight. Accept for value. So you can discharge a ticket, right? You're supposed to be able to get a ticket and you just endorse it, right? And whatever type of special ink, depending on the charlatan you're listening to, you endorse it and the Treasury discharges it. Now, there's two parts to this. One, they should. That's actually HJR 192, not to mention with the law of just compensation and the fact that it should be your benefit in return for mortgaging your estate to back the commercial system. However, they won't, because in order for that to even become a possibility, first of all, if they did this, their commercial scheme would fall through its own ass. Okay? Hold on, Chicago Cubby Bear said, I'll address that in a second, Cubby. The commercial system would fall through its own ass if it did this, right? And just started discharging debts, because the whole scheme, the very value of the Federal Reserve note or any other negotiable instrument based on it, such as traffic tickets, bonds, etc., is the ability to control your behavior. And if you could just discharge the debts, because it's not about money. There is no money. They don't care. It's about control. It has been since 33. They don't need the money. There's no money. It's just about power and control. Mm-hmm. So if they did do that, there would be no power and control. You would literally just get a traffic ticket, endorse it, ship it off to the frickin' Treasury, and then who cares? Now they're not forcing you to labor for their corporations, and now they're not controlling your behavior, so they're not going to do it, even though they should. Secondly, in order for them to have to do that in the first place, you have to be one of we the people of the states, and they've put state citizenship into disuse on purpose so they can lock you into trust into a trust indenture under the 14th Amendment. Of course, I show this all the time, that 14th Amendment citizenship is voluntary and distinct from the states, right? So McDonald v. State says that one may be, here, we'll go down here. Let's see, right here. The evidence of bushing on his voir dire showed that although he was not a citizen of the United States, he was a citizen and voter of the state. Under Section 2 of Article 2 of our state constitution, this is Indiana, one may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. And that's the case in every state, because equal footing, obviously, and it's just common sense. It is an inferior class of citizenship. So you'd have to be a citizen of the state. And the reason being is because if they only recognize the 14th Amendment citizen, the 14th Amendment citizen is a trust office and an agency of an insolvent principal. And see, the estate is not deemed to belong to the 14th Amendment citizen. It belongs to the state citizen, the one of we the people that is missing, presumed dead. Just like the Cestui Que Vie Act. That's a big component of this, right? That's why it's the title of tonight's stream. All right, but missing, presumed dead. So what the 14th Amendment citizen is actually doing is acting as an agent for the debtor principal in maintaining an estate that is eschewed to the state because the heir, the owner and heir, is presumed dead and intestate. There is no will. So let's look up and I'm just going to do it real quick and just, I know what it means, but I want to be able to show you guys. I'm sorry, a shetnet, right? Process by which the government takes ownership of unclaimed property or assets when there are no identifiable heirs or beneficiaries. This typically occurs when funds in a deposit account are deemed abandoned after a specific period. But actually, so they're modernizing, but really what it is it's the whole estate, including the minor infant heirs, right? When there is no heir or relative that is of age to take control of it, and there is no will left by the owner of the estate, it goes to the government, goes to the crown. It's called a shetment, right? So it is eschewed to the debtor principal. The United States is under the administration of the debtor principal, and you, as a creature of the United States in the trust office of U.S. citizen, are just an agency of the debtor principal, maintaining the decedent. This is why the IRS calls you a decedent, the decedent estate on behalf of the debtor principal, and it's been mortgaged, so you also are held liable for the obligations of the debt, the Federal Reserve debt. It's not yours in their eyes. You are just a work bitch. Maintaining the estate's not yours. So they don't owe you anything. So nothing's there for you to collect. Nothing's there for you to discharge unless you were a state citizen in the first place. Now, here's the double-edged sword. If you were a state citizen and you try to discharge or collect, you're accepting benefits, which puts you under administration. It's a big snake eating its own tail. You can't do it. Stop listening to charlatans. You literally can't do it. Any way you look at it under law, right? At law, you cannot do it. Because if you were a state citizen, you're like, okay, now give me my benefits. They're going to be like, great, here's your benefits. Now you bend to our will because we're giving you benefits. That's how it works. Just read Blackstone. It's literally an unwritten principle of law. It doesn't have to be written. It's an operation of law. Just like an implied trust or contract, it's an operation of law. It's just how it works. Does that make sense? Do you have anything to add on to that?
No, man.
So how about the space agency being under the health and welfare?
That's fucking stupid, man. I know that they're actually a front for DARPA projects and all kinds of shit like that. They working with smart dust and mass surveillance systems and shit like that. They spend a lot of fucking money on helium.
Yes, they do.
They're the biggest consumer of helium in the world.
So they spend a lot of Federal Reserve notes, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's for your benefit.
Yeah, of course. Because
it's for your welfare.
What benefit has NASA brought us?
Well, we just read it was
besides Velcro.
It was to commercialize space, of course. That'll be very beneficial to you because I'm sure you'll be given a dividend check for that probably if they were able to even pretend to do that.
Listen, they sold that fucking story before we ever even went to the moon. 1968, Stanley Kubrick, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You see the guy going up to the moon. There's already established bases on the moon. They got construction material up there, right? Construction machines. And the guy's got to go up there to investigate this monolith that appeared or that they found. And the things that they sold to you was that this guy, he's on a ship that's headed toward this space station, which was an intermediary place for him to be before continuing on to the moon. And you see the ship is on the side says Pan Am, right? And he decides to make a call home. So he pulls up the video phone thing, and it's a Bell telephone symbol. It comes up and says Bell Telephone, because that was the phone company at the time. And then when they're in the space station there's a hotel, and he checks in, and it's a Hilton. So and even on the thing, there were stewardesses dressed in Pan Am uniforms, but walking at all different angles because they're supposedly weightless and all this other bullshit, right? But they really seeded that whole idea to us. In fact, there was a TV show in the 70s called Space 1999. And this was under the premise that we would have, by 1999, colonized or at least had bases on the moon.
Well, Elon's working on Mars, dude. So, we can't even get back to the moon. Yeah. But it's good. Grit. Well, first I want to address Chubby. Cubby Bear. He says you can't get a fishing license. Chubby. Yeah, I mixed him. Chicago Chub. Or see, I did it again. Cubby Bear. He says you can't get a fishing license if you owe child support.
Yeah, I heard. I saw that.
It's fucking weird, but again, because you got to look at it when your property rights have been mortgaged. That's what's been mortgaged, right? You have to pay permission to exercise what should be just common law and unalienable rights, like the ability to feed yourself or your family. You have to pay for that. And then so essentially you can look at it like this, and I hate to do this because it's not actually what the word unalienable means. People like the unalienable, right? But it's really not. Just means you can't convey these rights or contract these rights away. But essentially, it also works with the etymological, because it is like there's a lien against your rights. So now if you have this debt, right, you have this debt, and creditor is how the FOC, friend of the court, child support system looks at themselves, like a creditor, because they put forth your child support to the other party first and then turn around and collect it from you. That's the whole welfare thing. They're like, we already put it out, you owe it. We became your kid's dad for you, or whatever, or mom, depending on which side of it you're on. And it's really fucked up and satanic, excuse my language. And so, yeah, it makes sense from that perspective, is the fact that, okay, well, now you've got the lien on this right, and you've got this debt. This creditor says you can't feed yourself until you pay it, which is it's Roman civil law. And we got Griffin. He says, I wonder if CV19 was to empty out the trust for your benefit. It was to empty out the trust for their benefit. It was think about this, because this public emergency, right, this massive, potentially world ending. And I remember seeing the freezer trucks on the side of the road filled with dead bodies, and just the people hacking up blood in the streets everywhere. I remember that. It was really scary. It was quite horrifying. I can understand why they'd lock everybody down, and masks littering the streets, because that definitely wouldn't have them in biohazard containers or anything if that was the case. But what it was a great justification for, well, these biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies to, again, for your benefit, appropriate money from the public coffers and funnel it into private pockets. CV19 was the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world, from the poor to the rich. It was the greatest wealth transfer. Who paid for the jabs?
$6.2 trillion, man.
Yeah,
that's what went into that warp speed bullshit. Hey, right, and this is basically what they did. They said, hey, American people, we can't help but notice that you're in an economic bind due to our actions. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out this massive fucking loan in your name, and you get to get $300 out of it, but you're liable for the full amount. You're welcome. Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah, that was literally, that's what it was. And it's for your benefit. We're going to develop this gene therapy bioweapon for your benefit. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to tell you what's in it, but you need to take it. We'll give you a hamburger. There's a burger element to this, right? I remember that. Yeah, the burger element, man. De Blasio. Absolutely. Why not, right? I think there's a burger element to this. Right. And you get these fries, right? And all I have to do is go get this experimental gene therapy that you won't tell me what the ingredients are in it. Okay. Yeah, let's go do that. And then I remember for a time after that, it's hilarious because it's really morbid and dark and kind of sad, but that's how desensitized we all are to the type of evil shit that's going on. When somebody would keel over, people would say, oh, I bet there's a burger element to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a burger element to that guy falling over right there, I bet.
And this is how people, they're swayed by their perception, who tells them some shit. And they'll tell you, like this thing here, I got it says, I want a peer-reviewed article and at least 10 sources. And the other guy says, why? You got jabbed in a parking lot by a stranger with a drug you knew nothing about just to get a free fucking donut.
Exactly. No, yeah. And listen, and nobody even questions the fact that, like, okay, so they're doing this for your benefit and they're giving it for free because there's such an emergency, but they don't give out insulin for free, do they? They don't give out life-saving medications for free, do they? No. So you should always be wary of something. Not only are they giving it to you for free, they're trying to pay you to take it. It's not in your best interest to do it. I'm just saying it's not. Right? It's common sense, because wouldn't they be doing that if it was actually from the goodness and kindness of the beast's heart, because that's what the government is. Wouldn't they be doing that with things that people actually need to live regularly, such as insulin? Right? You know what? We're going to foot the bill, which I don't agree with that. Do not do that. It's welfare again at gunpoint. Not that I don't feel for people with diabetes, but that again should be a voluntary situation. You can't rob me to give to somebody else. You just can't and then go, oh, well, you should want to do that anyway. Well, okay, you don't even know if I did want to do that. And now I definitely don't. Fuck them. And you. How's that sound? That's kind of the attitude it fosters in me, a little bit. If Tammy Joe from the trailer park wants to have 8 kids with 8 different dudes and then expects me to raise them, no, I'm not going to. I'm sorry your dad wasn't around and didn't teach you how to value yourself and, the proper way to start a family and all that. But again, that's not my fault. And now you either got to make it or you don't. And that's just kind of how it works. It's kind of the learning curve with, and people are going to go, well, it's heartless. It's not heartless, dude. This place is a school. You're supposed to, you do dumb shit. You're supposed to get knocked upside the head. So you learn. That's how it works. Okay. I'm not going to mitigate that for you. I don't know what to tell you. So, Josh, say what?
Well, here's something for you. Congress gets a daily $79 meal allowance. The average SNAP benefit is $188 per person, and that's for an entire month. These motherfuckers are raking in $80 a day for food to eat.
Dude, I've seen people,
oh, they're wasting our money.
I've seen chicks with full press-on nails, a brand new iPhone, and a nice car collecting like $1,800 a month in food stamps for like 12 kids. And do you think those kids are getting that food anyway? Let's just be honest here. No, probably not. It's probably getting sold for 50 cents on the dollar to your local drug dealer or something like that. So it's just
there's a lot of nepotism because a lot of the people that go to work at social services in these places like that are of the ilk that they deal with. You understand?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So they're like, I tell you what, Kanisha, I'll hook you up. I can do this, that, yeah. See, that's the thing. You go in there and follow the rules, though, you ain't going to get all that. And, I don't think what they get is really enough, but I don't think they should just keep getting it. This generational welfare bullshit, that's got to go, man. You got people that are 4th and 5th generation welfare people.
Well, like I said, I 100% disagree with it because it's robbing me at gunpoint to give my hard-earned property to somebody else. But even in a situation where you do have it, the fact that it's not for a limited time under strict regulation, like, yeah, we'll do this, but you need to have a job and you got 6 months and we're cutting you off because that's all, we're helping you out. And then 6 months later is no, it's like lifetime welfare. What are you talking about? Your whole life, we're just going to put you on the dole and take care. And of course, the politicians, and now that I've explained all this to you guys, you should see why they want to do this. Because yes, it allows them, it gives them the justification to enslave you, to literally, they're borrowing, there is no money. They are borrowing funds, credit against your sweat equity and your children's sweat equity. That's it. There's no money. It just represents your slavery. That's what every Federal Reserve note represents, is your slavery. Now, I did want to bring this up. You guys will find interesting since Josh, say what?
Hey, listen, I'm going to have to get off here, man. It's 11 o'clock. I got to get to bed, brother.
All right, sounds good. I'm about to shut it down. You might want to see this because I'm just about to shut it down. I want to see what you think of this. This right here. So Josh just said, what about the CARES Act? Well, check this out. This is the CARES Act, right? And this is specifically, the full name of this is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, okay? Right? Sounds innocent enough. This right here, it was passed into law 2020, right? When was it introduced? January 24th, 2019. So let's look at the title again. Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, or the CARES Act, for the coronavirus, right? For the pandemic. And I'm not YouTube. I'm not saying anything or implying anything. I'm just pointing out the facts here. It was introduced January 24th of 2019. When did it become a pandemic again? What was that? It was like, wasn't it January 2020 or something like that? I think, right?
Yeah,
that's weird.
Well,
holy shit! They must have psychics.
Well, no, they had a Event 201 in October of 2019, and it was shortly thereafter that was the simulation of a coronavirus that was a pandemic. And shortly after that, we started seeing news clips of people keeling over dead in China and they having to pick the bodies up out of the street and shit. And about a week or so after that, then we got this, oh, there's been a confirmed case of the Chinese coronavirus in the United States. Then boom, we're in January and it was full blown. They were going with it. And even Mike Pompeo stepped up. And this was weird because Trump gave the podium to Mike Pompeo. And Mike Pompeo said, we are in an active drill. And you hear Trump say, you should have told us. And I'm
Interesting.
like, what the fuck was that? We're in a live exercise.
Yep. Well, I mean, they did that whole event was to coordinate how to get big business, the private sector and the public sector to act in lockstep and coordination with one another in the event this might happen. But see, even that happened in October. Well, that's a smoking gun. This is January of 2019. And like Roger says, they must be prophets, right? And so Chicago, Cubby Bear, real quick, I just want to address, he says he's cool with Snap if you truly need it. Now, listen, Chad, I gotta tell you, I'm not against the charity. I think that's a beautiful thing and people should do that. But if you're for Snap, and you have to look at this logically, and I know you're a logical man, if you're for Snap, you're for the government robbing me at gunpoint to give to other people, because that's what Snap is. Right? So like you can be for Snap, but being for Snap is being for the government taking my hard-earned personal property that I work for and just giving it away to people that make poor life decisions. Now, if I want to do that on my own, right, which I may be apt to do, I might be inclined to do that because I have a heart, I have a conscience, and I'd like to think I'm not perfect for sure, but I'd like to think I'm generally a good guy. I may do, but when you take it from me at gunpoint to give to other people, this is nothing other than an excuse for and how much do you think the government rakes off Snap? Well, let's look at this simple scenario here, and then I'm going to shut it down. Coca-Cola has a contract with the government to allow people on Snap to buy Coca-Cola. What is nutritional about something that will clean your engine? That will eat a T-bone steak to the bone if you leave it in Coca-Cola. That they won't even tell you what the ingredients are. Have never told anybody what the ingredients to Coca-Cola are, ever. It's under lock and key, right? That's like one of their most prized proprietary properties, right? So this right here, that is case in point. So it's not about providing for poor people because let's be honest, we all know that the government does not give a shit about, especially poor people. In fact, the big thing about government is what do we do with the poor people for all throughout history? Like, okay, say we're all property owners. We're still going to have poor people. What do we do with them? We can't kill them. And this is how these people think, really. They think, well, we can't just kill them.
Jesus said, you will always have the poor.
Yeah, you'll always have the poor. And that's been how so they're like, okay, we'll just make everybody poor and lock them into a trust indenture. Now, even if you're rich, you're still poor because you don't have money and you're not rich like they are. So you're in this in-between phase where you're still tax cattle. You just happen to be a comfortable piece of tax cattle. So, that's what it boils down to. So no, I understand where you're coming from, Chad. I do. And I get it. I do. There are some people that truly fall on hard times and need a little bit of hand up. But there's always organizations that provide that because that's the good nature of mankind. There is that. You don't need to rob me at gunpoint to provide it. And with that, do you have anything you want to say, Dad, before I shut this down?
No, man.
Okay. Well, as always, I appreciate you guys. Pandemic bonds, Ryan. Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Roger. As always, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'll be uploading the presentation from the Truth Expo tonight. If you guys want to check that out, it'll be on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and X, depending on where you're tuning in. Well, I don't stream to X because they shadow ban me, so they can kiss my ass. But outside of that, the other 3 platforms, you guys can check it out. And I will see you guys probably tomorrow because I missed a whole week of streaming. So actually, I'm going to be on my dad's stream tomorrow night. Actually, I forgot about that. Are you still doing a stream tomorrow night?
Hell yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do that. So I'll see you guys there. Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind tomorrow night, and you guys have an excellent evening.
We might even have that party poet guy show up.
Well, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. See you later,
Well,
Griffin. Valley.
I messaged him and told him you were on right now and shit. I didn't see him pop in. He didn't. I don't know, man.
Well, he's probably forced it. That's why. And I'll call him on it. Good night, Roger, Griffin, Valley, Eddie, everyone else. Scott. Good to see you guys. Chicago, Roger. Later, guys.
I got to get out of here, bros. I'm going. Peace.
All right, later.